The emergency beacon pierced through the cosmic void like a scream in the darkness. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, her weathered hands gripping the command console as the decoded message scrolled across the holographic display. The translation matrix struggled with the alien syntax, but the desperation was unmistakable. "Ma'am, we're receiving a distress call from the Zalathi Confederation," reported Lieutenant Martinez, his fingers dancing over the communications array. They're begging for help." Chen raised an eyebrow. The Zalathi were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most advanced civilizations, their crystalline ships and energy manipulation technology far surpassing anything humanity had developed. For them to send a distress call was like watching gods plead for mercy. "What's their situation?" Chen asked, her voice steady despite the implications racing through her mind. "Unknown aggressors have invaded their home system, 16 worlds under siege. Their entire defense fleet has been eliminated." Martinez's voice cracked slightly on the last word. "Admiral, they're specifically requesting human military assistance." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's systems. Chen's tactical officer, Commander Torres, looked up from his station with disbelief written across his scarred face. "Ma'am, the Zalathi have always considered us primitive. They've refused every offer of alliance for the past 50 years. Chen nodded grimly. She remembered the diplomatic meetings, the polite but condescending smiles of the Zalathi ambassadors as they declined human offers of mutual defense treaties. They had called humanity charmingly enthusiastic, but ultimately unsuited for modern warfare. The memory still stung. "Patch me through to Fleet Command," Chen ordered. "Priority Alpha Channel." Within minutes, the familiar face of Admiral Harrison appeared on the main screen, his expression grave. Behind him, the Emergency Command Center buzzed with activity as staff officers coordinated responses to reports flooding in from across human space. "Sarah, I assume you've received the Zalathi transmission?" Harrison said without preamble. "Yes, sir. What are your orders?" Harrison paused, and Chen could see the weight of decision in his eyes. "The Security Council is meeting in emergency session, but initial reports suggest this threat extends beyond Zalathi space. We've lost contact with 3 human colonies in the Outer Rim. Whatever's happening out there, it's big. Sir, with respect, we can't wait for committee decisions while entire civilizations burn," Chen said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen too many battles. "My fleet is the closest to Zalathi space. We could be there in 6 hours if we push the engines." "Sarah, you're talking about taking a human fleet into the heart of alien territory to fight an unknown enemy. The political ramifications alone—" "Sir, sometimes doing what's right matters more than doing what's politic," Chen interrupted. "Besides, if this enemy can overwhelm the Zalathi, they'll be at our doorstep next. Better to fight them there than here." Harrison studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "You have operational authority, Admiral. Take whatever forces you need, but Sarah, be careful. We don't know what we're dealing with." The transmission ended, and Chen turned to face her bridge crew. Every eye was on her, waiting for the order that would either save 2 civilizations or doom them both. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We're going to war." The response was immediate. Across the human shock fleet, ships began powering up their weapon systems and plotting jump coordinates. The fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, not the sleek, elegant vessels preferred by most alien races, but brutal, angular warships designed by a species that had clawed its way out of the deepest gravity well in known space. The UES Retribution led the formation, its massive bulk bristling with kinetic cannons and missile batteries. Flanking it were the heavy cruisers Damascus and New Berlin, their armor plating scarred from a dozen previous engagements. Behind them came the destroyer squadrons, fast, aggressive ships with names like Revenge, Fury, and Defiance that spoke to humanity's approach to warfare. "Jump coordinates locked in," reported the navigation officer. "All ships report ready for transit." Chen took one last look at the star chart showing their destination. The Zilathi home system of Kristhara had been a beacon of peace and prosperity for over 1,000 years. Now it was a war zone. "Execute jump," she commanded. The stars streaked into lines of light as the human fleet disappeared into hyperspace, racing toward a battle that would define the future of the galaxy. Behind them, Earth's shipyards worked frantically to prepare additional forces, while ahead of them, an ancient enemy prepared to face a species they had never encountered before. As the Retribution hurtled through the dimensional fold, Chen reviewed everything humanity knew about the Zilathi. They were energy beings who had transcended their physical forms millennia ago, inhabiting crystalline constructs that allowed them to manipulate matter at the molecular level. Their technology was so advanced, it seemed like magic to most species. Their warships could phase in and out of normal space-time, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. Yet something had destroyed their entire defense fleet in a matter of hours. "Admiral, we're receiving additional transmissions from Zilathi space," Martinez announced, his face pale. "They're not distress calls. They're obituaries." "What do you mean?" "Entire colonies are transmitting final messages. Cultural databases, historical records, everything they can compress and broadcast before—" Martinez swallowed hard. "Before they're silenced." Chen felt a chill run down her spine. Whatever was attacking the Zilathi wasn't just conquering them, it was wiping them out completely, forcing them to scatter their knowledge to the cosmos like seeds before a fire. "How long until we reach the system?" 4 hours, 17 minutes at current velocity, the navigation officer replied. "Signal the fleet. All ships are to prepare for immediate combat upon arrival. I want weapons hot and shields up the moment we drop out of hyperspace." Commander Torres looked up from his tactical display. "Ma'am, we still don't know what we're fighting. Without intelligence on enemy capabilities, Torres, in the history of human warfare, when have we ever had complete intelligence?" Chen smiled grimly. "We adapt, we overcome, or we die trying. It's what we do." The hours passed slowly as the fleet raced through hyperspace. Intelligence reports filtered in from other sources, refugee ships fleeing Zilathi space with tales of massive vessels that seemed to consume light itself, of entire planets going dark in minutes, of an enemy that fought with weapons beyond current understanding. But Chen had seen fear like this before. When humanity first encountered the aggressive Krillian Empire, every species in the galaxy had written them off as doomed. The Krillians had superior numbers, better technology, and centuries of military experience. They had conquered dozens of civilizations. They hadn't expected humanity's particular brand of stubborn viciousness. 30 minutes to arrival," the navigation officer announced. Chen stood and walked to the main viewport, staring out at the swirling energies of hyperspace. Somewhere beyond that barrier of twisted reality, an ancient enemy was destroying one of the galaxy's greatest civilizations. Soon, they would face the children of Earth. "All hands! This is Admiral Chen," she announced over the ship's communication system. "In 30 minutes, we drop into the unknown to answer a distress call from a species that has never shown us anything but disdain. You might wonder why we're risking our lives for aliens who consider us primitive barbarians." She paused, letting her words sink in across the fleet. "We're doing this because it's right. Because when someone calls for help, we answer. Because we're human, and that's what humans do. We stand up to bullies, we protect those who can't protect themselves, and we never, ever back down from a fight." The response came back from every ship in the fleet, thousands of voices raised in defiant unity. They were ready to face whatever waited for them in the darkness of Zilathi space. 10 minutes to arrival," came the announcement. Chen returned to her command chair and activated her personal comm to fleet command. Harrison, if you're monitoring this channel, know that whatever happens next, humanity stands by its principles. We don't abandon allies, even ones who've never been our allies. 5 minutes to arrival. All ships report combat ready. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, each officer focused on their instruments and displays. The tension was palpable, but it was the good kind, the focused energy of professionals preparing for the most important mission of their lives. 60 seconds to normal space. Chen gripped the arms of her command chair. Through the viewport, she could see the first hints of real stars beginning to peek through the hyperspace barrier. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves today. We're fighting for everyone who can't fight for themselves. Show them what humans can do. The countdown reached 0, and the human shock fleet burst into normal space in the heart of the Zalathi system, ready to face an enemy that had never encountered the fury of a Deathworld species unleashed. The Kristara system was a nightmare of twisted metal and dying light. Where once the Zalathi's magnificent crystal cities had orbited their pale blue star in perfect geometric harmony, now only debris fields remained, glittering like scattered diamonds against the darkness. The enemy fleet hung in space like a cancer, their vessels so black they seemed to absorb the very starlight around them. "Mother of God," whispered Lieutenant Martinez, his face pale as he stared at the tactical display. "Admiral, I'm reading over 300 enemy vessels. They're massive." Admiral Chen studied the sensor data with the cold calculation of a veteran commander. The enemy ships were unlike anything in the galactic databases, organic-looking behemoths that seemed to pulse with their own dark energy. Each one was easily twice the size of her largest battleship, and they moved through space with an unsettling fluidity that suggested living creatures rather than mechanical constructs. "Ma'am, incoming transmission from the planet," Communications Officer Martinez announced, his voice tight with urgency. "It's the Zalathi High Council." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a being of pure crystalline light barely maintaining coherence. The Zalathi leader's energy patterns fluctuated wildly, indicating extreme distress and imminent dispersal. "Human Admiral," the alien's voice resonated like chimes in a hurricane. "You came. We did not expect. Our pride has cost us everything." "Council Leader, this is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. What can you tell us about the enemy?" "They call themselves the Devourers of Light," the Zalathi replied, its form flickering more rapidly. "They consume energy, all energy. Our weapons, our shields, even our life force itself feeds them. They have been dormant in the void between galaxies for eons, but something has awakened them." Chen felt her blood run cold. An enemy that fed on energy would explain how they had so quickly overwhelmed the Zalathi, whose entire civilization was based on energy manipulation. "How many survivors do you have?" she asked. "Less than 1 million across all our worlds." "The evacuation ships cannot break through their blockade. Admiral, we beg you, save our children, if nothing else." The transmission cut out as another wave of enemy vessels swept through the planet's orbital space. Chen watched in horror as the last Zalathi defense platforms simply stopped. Their crystalline structures went dark and fell toward the planet's surface like dying stars. "Admiral, enemy fleet is changing course," reported Commander Torres from the tactical station. "They've detected us and are moving to intercept." "Good," Chen said, her voice carrying a deadly calm that made her bridge crew straighten unconsciously. "I was wondering how to get their attention. All ships, battle formation Delta. Let's show these energy parasites what happens when you threaten innocent people." The human fleet spread out into a formation that would have seemed chaotic to most alien tacticians, but was actually carefully designed to maximize overlapping fields of fire while maintaining maximum maneuverability. Unlike the precise, predictable patterns favored by other species, human naval doctrine emphasized adaptability and aggressive tactics. "Admiral, we're receiving targeting data from the Zalathi survivors," Martinez announced. "They're transmitting the locations of their evacuation ships." Chen nodded grimly. "Torres, plot rescue routes for our fast attack craft. We'll need to punch holes in their formation to get those people out." "Ma'am, with respect, shouldn't we focus on eliminating the threat first?" "Commander, the moment we start thinking like that is the moment we become monsters ourselves," Chen replied. "We save lives first, ask questions later. It's the human way." The enemy fleet was closing now, and Chen could see details that made her stomach churn. The black ships weren't just dark. They were actively consuming the light around them, creating zones of absolute darkness that hurt to look at. Energy discharges flickered between them like lightning, but instead of illuminating, they seemed to make the surrounding space even darker. "All ships. This is Admiral Chen. Remember your training. These things feed on energy, so we do this the old-fashioned way. Kinetic weapons only. No energy shields, no plasma cannons. We're going to hit them with good old-fashioned metal and high explosives." The response came back from across the fleet. Acknowledgement from captains who understood they were about to fight a battle unlike any in recorded history. Human ships began dropping their energy shields and switching to passive sensors only. They would fight this battle like their ancestors had fought on Earth's oceans, with steel, iron, and unbreakable determination. The first Devourer ships reached weapons range, and space erupted into violence. Dark beams lanced out from the enemy vessels, but instead of finding energy to consume, they struck the inert hulls of human warships and simply dissipated. The aliens had never encountered a species willing to fight without energy shields or advanced weapons systems. "All batteries open fire," Chen commanded. The human fleet unleashed a storm of kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives. Railgun rounds traveling at significant fractions of light speed slammed into enemy hulls, while missile swarms filled the space between the fleets with conventional warheads. The Devourers reeled under the assault, their energy-draining abilities useless against simple metal and chemistry. But they adapted quickly. The alien ships began evasive maneuvers that defied physics, phasing in and out of normal space-time to avoid the human barrage. Their return fire shifted to different forms of attack: gravitational weapons that crushed hull plating, temporal distortions that aged metal to dust, exotic matter that simply deleted sections of human ships from existence. "Damage report," Chen called out as the Retribution shook under a gravitational wave that crumpled her port armor. "Hull breach on Deck 7. Weapon systems down to 70%, but we're still in the fight," Torres reported. "The Damascus is taking heavy damage, but she's still firing." Chen studied the tactical display with growing concern. The human fleet was holding its own, but barely. For every enemy ship they managed to damage with their primitive weapons, 2 more seemed to appear from the darkness, and the Devourers were learning, adapting their attacks to counter human tactics with terrifying speed. "Admiral, incoming transmission from Captain Rodriguez on the New Berlin," Martinez announced. The scarred face of Captain Rodriguez appeared on screen, his expression grim but determined. "Admiral, my ship is critically damaged, but I've got an idea. These things feed on energy, right? What if we give them more than they can handle?" Chen understood immediately. "Captain, you're talking about overloading your reactor." "Affirmative. If I can get close enough to one of their big ships and blow my containment field, it might create a feedback loop in their energy-draining systems. At minimum, it'll take out a significant portion of their fleet." The thought of losing Rodriguez and his crew tore at Chen's heart, but she knew he was right. Sometimes sacrifice was the only path to victory. "Captain, you don't have to do this. We can find another way." Rodriguez smiled sadly. "Admiral, I've got over 300 good people on this ship, and every single one of them volunteered for this mission knowing we might not come home. We didn't come here to survive. We came here to win." Before Chen could respond, the New Berlin broke formation and accelerated toward the largest Devourer vessel, its damaged engines screaming in protest. The enemy ship tried to phase out of normal space, but Rodriguez had anticipated the maneuver. His ship followed it into whatever dimension it had fled to, and both vessels disappeared from normal space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then space itself seemed to scream as a massive energy explosion erupted from nowhere, dragging both ships back into normal reality in a storm of twisted space-time and raw energy. The Devourer ship, evolved to feed on energy, couldn't handle the massive overload from the human reactor's destruction. It convulsed, its organic hull splitting open as energy cascaded through its systems. The feedback traveled through the neural networks connecting the enemy fleet, and dozens of other Devourer ships simply shut down as their systems overloaded. "My God," Torres whispered. "He did it. Rodriguez actually did it." Chen felt tears streaming down her cheeks, but her voice remained steady. "All ships, press the attack. Don't let their sacrifice be in vain." The human fleet surged forward with renewed fury, their weapons blazing as they struck at the confused and damaged enemy formation. But Chen knew this was just the beginning. The Devourers had shown they could adapt to human tactics, and there were still hundreds of enemy ships in the system. The real battle was just beginning. "Admiral, we're receiving multiple distress calls from the evacuation ships," Martinez reported. "The Zelati refugees are trapped behind enemy lines. If we don't move fast—" "I know," Chen said. "Torres, prepare the destroyer squadrons for a breakthrough attack. We're going to punch a hole through their lines and get those people out, no matter what it costs." The human shock fleet regrouped and prepared for the next phase of the battle, their determination unshaken despite the odds against them. They had come to answer a distress call from a species that had never shown them respect, and they would see the mission through to the end, whatever that might be. The destroyer squadrons cut through space like hungry wolves, their angular hulls bristling with kinetic weapons and missile pods. Admiral Chen watched from the Retribution's bridge as her fastest ships executed the most dangerous maneuver in naval warfare. A direct assault on superior forces to create an escape corridor for civilians. "Destroyers Fury and Defiance are engaging the enemy perimeter," reported Commander Torres, his scarred hands flying over the tactical display. "They're taking heavy fire but holding formation." Chen gritted her teeth as she watched the tactical display. The Zelathi evacuation ships were scattered throughout the inner system, their crystalline hulls flickering weakly as they tried to maintain what little energy they had left. Each ship carried thousands of refugee civilians, beings of pure energy whose very existence was fading as the Devourers consumed the ambient power in the system. "Admiral, the Revenge is breaking through," Martinez announced, excitement creeping into his voice despite their desperate situation. "Captain Morrison has opened a gap in their formation." On the main screen, Chen could see the destroyer Revenge carving through enemy lines like a blade through silk. Her captain, the legendary Jessica Morrison, was executing a textbook breakthrough maneuver, using her ship's superior speed and the Devourers' momentary confusion to punch through their blockade. But the enemy was adapting again. Even as Chen watched, she could see the Devourer ships beginning to coordinate their response, their movements becoming more organized and predatory. They were learning to fight humans with terrifying efficiency. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. The enemy is adapting faster than anticipated. We need to change tactics immediately." She paused, considering her options. Every choice led to casualties, but some led to victory. "All vessels, prepare for the Terran maneuver." The bridge fell silent. The Terran maneuver was theoretical, a formation designed for fighting energy-based entities that had never been tested in actual combat. It required perfect coordination and absolute trust between ship captains, and even then, the casualty projections were devastating. "Ma'am, are you sure?" Torres asked quietly. "The projections showed 90% losses." "Commander, those projections assumed we were fighting normal energy weapons. These things are different." Chen's voice carried the weight of command and the burden of sending good people to their deaths. "Besides, what's the alternative? Let them consume the galaxy, one system at a time." The human fleet began to reshape itself into a formation that would have seemed impossible to most military strategists. Instead of maintaining defensive positions or logical attack vectors, the ships arranged themselves in a complex three-dimensional spiral that maximized kinetic weapon coverage while creating multiple overlapping fields of fire. As the formation took shape, Chen opened a channel to the Zalathi survivors on the planet below. The crystalline being that appeared on screen was barely coherent, its energy patterns fluctuating wildly as it struggled to maintain existence. "Council Leader, we're going to get your people out, but we need your help. Can your remaining ships coordinate with our rescue operation?" "Admiral Chen," the Zalathi's voice was like distant music, fading with each word. "We have already lost so much. Our weapons are useless, our technology betrays us. How can we assist beings who fight with such primitive methods?" Chen smiled grimly. "That's exactly why you can help us. Your ships don't register as threats to these things anymore. You can get close to the evacuation vessels while we keep the Devourers busy." Understanding dawned in the aliens' energy patterns. "You would trust us with the lives of our own people? After we have shown you only contempt for decades?" "Council Leader, grudges are a luxury we can't afford right now. Besides, it's what humans do. We help people who need helping." The Zalathi leader's form pulsed with something that might have been gratitude. "Then we will do what we can. Our remaining defense ships will move to escort the evacuation vessels to your position." The plan was desperate and dangerous, but it was their only chance. As the human fleet engaged the main Devourer force in brutal combat, the surviving Zalathi ships began moving through the chaos toward their stranded civilians. "Enemy vessels are focusing their attack on our main formation," Torres reported. "The Terran maneuver is working. They can't figure out where to concentrate their fire." Chen nodded, but her attention was fixed on the rescue operation. The human destroyers had created a narrow corridor through the enemy lines, but it was rapidly closing as the Devourers moved to cut off the escape route. "All batteries, concentrate fire on Grid 7 Alpha," she commanded. "We need to keep that corridor open." The Retribution's kinetic cannons roared, sending streams of metal projectiles into the enemy formation. Around her, the rest of the human fleet was fighting with a desperation that bordered on madness. They were outnumbered 10-1, fighting an enemy that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality, but they refused to give ground. "Admiral, the Damascus is taking critical damage," Torres announced, his voice tight with concern. "Captain Williams is requesting permission to execute a suicide run." "Negative," Chen replied immediately. "We've lost enough good people today. Tell Williams to fall back to the second line." But even as she spoke, Chen could see that the human formation was beginning to buckle under the enemy assault. The Devourers had figured out how to counter the Terran maneuver, coordinating their attacks to create cascading failures in the human defensive grid. "Ma'am, first evacuation ship is through the corridor," Martinez reported. "The Zalathi refugees are making for the rally point." Chen allowed herself a moment of hope, but it was short-lived. The tactical display showed more enemy ships arriving from the outer system, massive vessels that dwarfed even the largest Devourer ships she had faced so far. "My God," Torres whispered. "Those things must be their capital ships. Admiral, we can't fight those." Chen studied the approaching vessels and made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "All ships, prepare for immediate withdrawal to Rally Point Gamma. We're pulling back." Admiral, we can't abandon the remaining evacuation ships, Martinez protested. We're not abandoning anyone, Chen replied, her voice deadly calm. We're regrouping for one final push. All ships, execute fighting withdrawal to the rally point. Keep those corridors open as long as possible. The human fleet began to fall back in good order, their weapons maintaining continuous fire as they retreated. It was a textbook withdrawal, but Chen knew it might not be enough. Too many Zelathi evacuation ships were still trapped behind enemy lines, and the approaching capital ships would reach them within minutes. Admiral, incoming transmission from Fleet Command, Martinez announced. Admiral Harrison's face appeared on screen, his expression grim. Sarah, we're monitoring the tactical situation. The Council has authorized the deployment of experimental weapons. The research ship Einstein is en route to your position with a prototype device. What kind of device? Chen asked. Something our scientists have been working on since we first encountered energy-based life forms. It's called a quantum resonance disruptor. In theory, it should create a feedback loop that makes it impossible for the devourers to process energy. Chen felt a spark of hope. How long until the Einstein reaches us? 20 minutes. Can you hold out that long? Chen looked at the tactical display. 20 minutes might as well have been 20 hours given their current situation. But humanity had survived impossible odds before. We'll hold the line, sir. Chen out. The Admiral turned to her bridge crew. Seeing the same determination in their eyes that had carried humanity through every crisis in its violent history. All ships, we have 20 minutes to save what's left of the Zelathi civilization. Let's make them count. The battle raged with unprecedented fury as the human fleet fought to buy time for the experimental weapon to arrive. Ships fell on both sides, their wreckage adding to the graveyard that had once been a peaceful star system. But for every human vessel lost, 10 more Zelathi evacuation ships made it to safety. 15 minutes remaining, Torres announced as another enemy assault wave approached their position. Chen gripped the arms of her command chair and prepared for the final phase of the battle. Win or lose, the galaxy would remember that when the darkness came calling, humanity had answered the call for help. They had shown that sometimes primitive weapons wielded by a species too stubborn to know when they were beaten could make all the difference in the universe. All ships, prepare for final assault. We're not leaving anyone behind. The human fleet surged forward one last time, their weapons blazing as they fought to hold the line until salvation arrived. In the depths of space, an ancient enemy learned what it truly meant to face the children of a death world, beings who would fight impossible odds not for conquest or glory, but simply because it was the right thing to do.